Howdy, and welcome to another episode from the Foundry where I give monkey brain advice to DMs and players alike, along with tips and how-to guides using my campaign as an example. Today, I'll be doing the final dive into coastal encounters for levels 4 and 5. I just want to give a quick update on what some of my future videos are going to look like. I'm going to be putting the encounter series on a pause for a little bit based on some of the feedback I received. I thought it would be necessary to make a small series for new players. This series will cover everything from how to navigate your character sheet, how to create a character, and an example on how to play out your turn. Now, unlike in part 1 where finding creatures to utilize along the coast was fairly difficult, for levels 4 and 5 this was much easier. So I've created 8 balanced encounters for your party of 4 adventurers, 2 of them being martial classes and 2 of them being either casters or half casters. In the description down below, you can find timestamps to the specific level and difficulty to reference for your table. These encounters are split up into 2 categories, the first being deadly encounters while the second are regular encounters. Now, without further ado, let's go ahead and dive into our first deadly encounter for level 4. Our first deadly encounter will be one water elemental myrmidon. Elementals are classic in any fantasy world, and as your party gets higher level, the elemental should also scale up in difficulty and strength too. That's where the water elemental myrmidon comes in. This water elemental might seem weaker than the normal water elemental due to having slightly less damage it can do each round, but it makes up for this by having additional abilities like freezing strike and a higher AC. Freezing strike is really interesting in how it can interact with the party and change the dynamics of the encounter itself. Depending on what hazards you have available or going on in this encounter, these freezing strikes reducing the martial character's movement speed can really hamper their ability to avoid certain obstacles or be able to retreat. And with the additional 40 movement speed that the myrmidon has in comparison to the water elemental, it can easily chase your party down even on lands. If you haven't checked out my how to create a legendary monster series, I would highly recommend that, as the water elemental myrmidon is perfect for this, either using part 1's mechanical methodology or the villain actions method. Moving on to the second deadly encounter, we have the Triton Master of Waves. Now, if you've played World of Warcraft, the Triton Master of Waves is essentially a frost mage, or even a waterbender if you watched Avatar: The Last Airbender. Depending on how you set up the encounter, this Master of Waves can be quite nasty. In my opinion, the best way to utilize him would be to have him in an area that either has shallow water all around or small tide pools surrounding the party. This will allow him to fully utilize everything in his stat block, from summoning water weirds in the shallows or in the tide pools, which he can do either at the beginning or in the middle of combat. This can be really interesting, as you can have the Master of Waves chanting in an unknown language, and then after he's done, nothing happens, or at least nothing that the party can see, because water weirds in water are invisible. This will add tension and potentially make the party act a little more recklessly. Moving away from that ability, we have a super versatile spell list that the Master of Waves can even do. Things like Ray of Frost and even Cone of Cold. Depending on how you want to run it at your table, you can have these spells also affect the terrain and the water around them, completely changing the environment and adding an extra layer of difficulty that the party has to overcome. Now, if your party thinks, based on all these ranged attacks, that he will flop over like a fish if they get into close combat, they'll be rudely awakened as he uses his Wave Touch and his Frigid Shield ability. These two combo together make him a nightmare even in close quarters. Wave Touch freezing any barbarian in their track, while Frigid Shield kind of works like a minor version of Armor of Agathis that he can use every single turn. Turning down the difficulty a bit, we have our first regular encounter, a roper. Ropers are really interesting in how you can utilize them. I would say use them in a coastal cave, either about 15 or 20 feet just inside the cave, hanging from the roof. That way, if the party sends out one person to scout, it can grab them and pull them in, covering their mouths so they can't alert the party of anything happening. Or if the party is all walking along the entrance of the cave, it can grab a few of them, pulling them all in, leaving the others stunned, unsure what to do. Or if the party is really hesitating outside of a cave mouth or an extra cave opening, you can have the roper literally rope them in and kind of railroad the party lightly in the direction you want to take them. However, if you really don't like the idea of using a roper, you can use 2 gibbering mouthers. These mouthers can really incite a good amount of chaos into the encounter as a whole. I would say separate them out from each other about 15 to 20 feet. That way, they can almost always keep the entire party in range of their gibbering ability. Individually, they don't do that much damage, but the amount of chaos they can spark in the party can really emphasize and make this a fun, memorable encounter. If the party happens to randomly run into one of them, then it can do a decent amount of damage with its bite attack. Overall, this is more of just keeping the party on edge and adding tension, or potentially making them create extra noise, waking something up even further in the cave. Moving on to level 5, we have our first deadly encounter being 1 myrmidon and 3 swashbucklers. Any pirate would love to have a myrmidon on their boat, as it can kind of fuse with it and control the entire ship using all of its abilities to ensure that they have calm seas. Now, in terms of combat, the myrmidon doesn't really add too much to the actual encounter itself, as he will not directly attack the party. Initially, if the party manages to board the ship, that's when he'll start to use his abilities, either charming the party, casting darkness, creating chaos, or even using control water to knock one of them into the ocean. While the majority of the damage will be done by the 3 swashbucklers. They will either be attacking your party's ship or jumping out of their boat, running along the coast to meet up with the party. Swashbucklers by themselves don't do that much damage, but they're more of just a thematic encounter. They have 3 attacks, 1 with the dagger, 2 with the rapiers, which in total can really add up. Moving on to our second deadly encounter, we have the spirit troll. Spirit trolls feel significantly weaker than the other trolls based on the fact that they have significantly lower HP. However, they make up for this by having their regeneration ability only be stopped by either psychic or force damage. This essentially makes them immortal if the party doesn't have a caster. Not just that though, they would need a caster with very specific cantrips or spells to even stop them. On top of them being nigh impossible to kill, spirit trolls can really be utilized as a good way to kind of show the party that it's okay to retreat, because all their attacks also do psychic damage. This means the barbarian thinking he can just tank this encounter like any other one will realize very quickly that that is not the case here. For our first regular encounter for level 5 parties, we have a perfect lore-based monster that can also open up many different avenues for the party as a whole. This would be the Eblis. If you're going to do a combat encounter, using 4 of these would be most ideal for proper balancing purposes. Otherwise, you can use the Eblis to really just give small quests to the party and reward them with treasure, or use them like how the lore describes them. They're described as being the reincarnation of evil humans who have died. Now, you can flavor this easily by saying that they're evil humans that have died at sea who have then been reincarnated into these 8-foot tall cranes who kind of just wander the coast looking for more treasure. They might have a low damage output, but they can be very difficult to nail down with the spells that they have: blur, hypnotic pattern, and even minor illusion. With these combined, they can do a lot of utility and control of the battlefield, really negating a lot of the party's power. As for our last regular encounter, we will have a singular Kraken priest with 6 regular cultists. The cultists really just kind of serve as extra bodies and extra fodder to help do the priest's bidding, but the real menace here is the Kraken priest. In Monsters of the Multiverse, the Kraken priest was really buffed up. It was given an additional 5 AC along with an amazing new ability, Thunderbolt. This Thunderbolt ability gives it a really strong ranged attack along with its already powerful melee attack. This means if your party were to rush him just like with the Wave Master, his thunderous touch will quickly put them on their butts, while its Thunderbolt will nail them and really weaken them as they're running up to him. And should the Kraken Priest really need it, he has so many useful spells to really just utilize the environment around him. Depending on how you want to describe them, when they use their Kraken speech to pretty much do an AoE fear ability, you can really enhance its Kraken-esque features. And with that, that brings us to the end of this video, wrapping up tier 1 play in coastal environments, with 8 additional encounters spread across levels 4 and 5 of deadly and regular encounters. If you found this video helpful and enjoyable, like this video and comment down below some of your favorite encounters to use in a coastal environment. And if you haven't already, check out my encounter series where you can find other interesting encounters for different environments. But yeah, see you guys next time.